Gaza. I want to get some perspective now from former Israeli hostage negotiator Gershon Baskin, his Middle East director of the International Communities Organization, a well-known face here on CNN. Gershon, great to have you back on the show. Let me start really the way that we pretty much set that up. This has been, I think it's fair to say, a very tenuous ceasefire. Anyone looking at any of the headlines, the deaths, the strikes in Gaza might reasonably have concluded that the ceasefire may have collapsed. Only this weekend, of course, we saw 2 children killed by an Israeli drone while they were collecting firewood. How do you see, Gershon, the next steps here, given, of course, only all but one of hostage have returned?
Right. Well, this is very important because phase 2 should have begun already, and it was held back because Hamas was not able to locate all the deceased hostages. There were 28. There's one remaining, as you've said. But the Americans are pushing forward with phase 2, and we should expect within the next 2 weeks announcements about the formal creation of the border peace headed by President Trump, the executive board, which is going to oversee the work of the Palestinian Technocratic Committee that will include personalities like Tony Blair and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and others, and then the Palestinian Technocratic Government, which will number between 12 to 15 people. We should also see with the announcements of the creation of these 3 bodies, the announcements about which countries are going to be deploying forces to Gaza. And with the deployment of additional foreign forces to Gaza, we should see American pressure on Israel to withdraw further back from the positions that they're holding. These are the plans. Yeah. This is the upbeat that the Americans are pushing on the agenda right here. Is the intensive work of the Civilian Military Coordinating Committee is continuing near the Gaza border inside of Israel. Well, there are a lot of moving pieces here, but the positive, optimistic tone from the Americans should be encouraging to all of us.
Yeah, and look, as you were talking, I'm just seeing now that an Israeli delegation that has been led by hostage coordinator Gal Hirsch has spoken with mediators in Cairo about securing the release of the body of the last deceased hostage held in Gaza. That is very good news, of course, indeed, and closure for so many of the families and for that family. But you were breaking down there, Gershon, the points that are included as part of this deal, the pressure, of course, that we've heard from the US administration. The UN Security Council passed, I think it was in early to mid-November, of course, this stabilization force. Do we have a sense, and you mentioned that briefly, do we have a sense from your contacts, from your sources, of what countries are part of this? Because this resolution, of course, was intended to add international legitimacy to President Trump's 20-point plan. Where is this going, you think? What are you hearing?
What I'm hearing is that all of the countries are asking for clarification on the mandate of the force. None of the countries want to send forces to Gaza that are going to be confronting Hamas and engaging in the disarmament of Hamas, the commissioning of Hamas's weapons. That's a job that has to be done by the Palestinian government and the Palestinian security force that will be established. None of the foreign countries coming to be deployed in Gaza want to be in a situation of confronting Israeli soldiers either. So I think that there is going to be a need for more clarification on the mandate, perhaps in an additional Security Council resolution, or at least some guidelines provided by the United Nations to give it the kind of legitimacy and credibility and assuredness that the countries that might send forces to Gaza need. There are 2 countries that seem to be willing to send forces that at this point Israel is trying to prevent, and that's Turkey and Qatar, who Israel sees them as supporters of Hamas, and therefore they should not be part of the stabilization force. My understanding is that the United States is very intent on having troops coming from Turkey and from Qatar, as well as from other countries that we've heard, like Azerbaijan and Indonesia. I think it's very important that there be a European presence. There will be some kind of European presence at the Rafah crossing on the Gaza side, based on the model that existed way back in 2005 with Eurobam, the European Union border administration management body, which has expertise in managing borders. Maybe we'll see some other European countries joining in. That would be very good.
But what you are sensing, Gershon, that pressure from the United States is still being applied. Of course, the attention has been focused elsewhere in the last few weeks, but your sense is that pressure from the Trump administration that this continue, the second stage continue. You're feeling that from what you're telling me. But the reason I'm asking you this is because there have been domestic concerns also, right? We saw just yesterday the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition boycotting a Knesset vote, right, that would have endorsed President Donald Trump's plan. And we know that the second phase of the plan acknowledges a pathway to a Palestinian determination and statehood, which we know that Netanyahu does not support. So what happens there domestically?
Well, first of all, I think what we've seen is Mr. Witkoff has been keeping the pressure up on the Israeli government to make sure that those voices in the Israeli government that want to resume the war will not be able to win over, and that Netanyahu and his government is reined in. We saw yesterday that President Trump is going to be hosting Netanyahu once again in the White House in another couple of weeks. We're not sure what the agenda. It is probably about phase two and about other issues that concern the Israeli-American relationship. You're 100% right that the current government of Israel will not be able to move forward on the Palestinian statehood issue. This is something that's way beyond their political ability or belief that they will do. And let's face it, within a year, Israel is going to be going to elections, and hopefully that will be an issue on the agenda. And hopefully the Israeli people will elect a government that will be more willing to talk about genuine peace with our Palestinian neighbors.
Gershon, as always, great to have you on the show and great you appreciate your insight. Gershon Baskin there.